Well, sorry about the technical difficulties. We say in the Marine Corps, no plan survives first contact. So there's always something that goes wrong. Murphy's Law, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Absolutely. And so do I have everyone here? Are we missing anyone? Great. And so as Professor Doe said, my name is Fredrick Walker. I'm the advisor for vocation and career development. And so what that means is I am your career services office. So everything that you think about when it comes to career planning, all of those steps, that's what I'm here for. And so as you can see, we're here to talk about becoming career ready. So thinking as seniors ready to graduate, I imagine most of you in May or in the fall, what are the things you need to be thinking about now to be ready when that transition into postgraduate from your undergraduate life happens? And so our first slide here, once they get everything working, you should see a slide similar to this when you're walking around Norton Hall. And what this is the ad for Focus2. And this is a new platform we've launched over the last couple of months. And what it does is give you full access to everything you need for career planning. So if you go on here, log up for your free account, then you'll be able to see things like salary data, job outlooks, Bureau of Labor Statistics reporting. You'll be able to see what things match your gifting and your personality. So of course it's not prescriptive, but it gives you a lot of descriptive things you can use to figure out what fields match your skill set, what things would you enjoy, and how you can make that happen. And to get to this, you simply go to my website, boycecollege.com/career development. Click on the student resources page, and then there'll be a link that says new to Focus2 ? Start here. And that'll give you the step-by-steps to sign up. And so for example, to give you an idea of the things you can find there, I didn't make a slide because of course I want you to go sign up. So I printed it off, some of the statistics that I can get if I go in there and look up musician. So what I did was went in, logged into my student account and looked at musician. I get an overview. It tells me professional musicians not only play musical instruments, but they often write musical compositions, sing, conduct, or lead an orchestra or band. They may perform alone or as part of a group on stage, TV, radio, or in a movie production. Then I can look at education. It tells me most people who enter this field have a VOTEC certificate or an associate's, and then some have a bachelor's. I can look at common areas of study such as jazz, keyboard, woodwind instruments, and then I can see duties, what the average musician does on a day-to-day basis, skills that make someone an effective musician, things like decision-making, manual dexterity, troubleshooting, nothing groundbreaking here, you would expect this. Values, of course, artistic creativity, tangible results matter to you. Again, things you would expect a musician to care about. But then what I really care about in my role, once we get past the question of vocation, is the question of career. What does it look like to make a career in this field? And so when I get to Outlook, it tells me employment in this field is projected to grow 2 to 4% between 2018 and 2028. What that means is its growth is slightly slower than the average for all occupations. So if I'm a senior as a worship major, I'm starting to think, okay, slower than average growth. Okay, let me keep that in mind. Put that in the box. Hold it in my brain for later. Earnings, as I move down to the earnings section, people established, operative word, in their career generally earn between $26,700 and $74,000 per year. And so again, put that in the box, put it in the back of my head for later as I write resumes, cover letters. Is that enough? This is for people that are established in their career, so after I've done this a while, I may make as little as $26,000, but I could make as much as $74,000. And of course, this is a median. We all know how mathematical averages work. This is the middle, and then there's people on the far extremities, both high and low. And of course, that's recognized here. Exceptional performers can make excess of 6 figures, $120K. And then another note of realism, musicians' salaries are very irregular because, as you would imagine, much of the work is on a short-term or part-time basis. And so again, I say that not to scare you, not to say, oh my goodness, you're not going to make any money, but to say what we want to do, especially as worship majors, is leverage our other skills besides our ability to perform in the musical arts. And what I mean by that is, let's emphasize our leadership, our skills with leading groups, our management. Let's bring those things to the fore, our artistic ability that may be in writing and drawing. And as we do those things, continue to perform music, continue to hone those skills. And if your dream is to one day do that full time, let's slowly build that as a side hustle. And then, once we get a few years down the line, we're established in our career, we're starting to get venues more and more often, people know who we are, our Instagram following is growing, then we pull that boat up alongside the proverbial dock, and instead of jumping out into the world and saying, I hope my musical career works, we pull up alongside the dock, and we step off onto the dock and say, I've established my base now, I'm going to become a full-time musician. So what I'd like you to do, follow the dream, pursue the passion, but let's do it in a way that's wise. I don't want you to jump out after graduation and flounder. And then just a few other stats I can find there. Interest scores are going to take my test results, my assessment results, and compare me with the average musician. I can look at working conditions, again, nothing groundbreaking there. And then I have a whole list with links of professional organizations, places like the American Federation of Musicians, the American Symphony Orchestra League. So again, just a wealth of resources that you might not be aware of before you use Focus2. And I can do that with over 1,000 careers. I can do the same thing with a firefighter, with a professor, with a teacher. So it really gives you a chance to dream. And so any questions at all about Focus2 before we move forward into the meat?
Is this replacing or also supplementing the current resources, like the ministry connections?
Oh, excellent question. And so it's supplementing. So ministry connections, or on the Boyce side, we call it Boyce Connections. The same platform is our internal job board. So it's still working to try to get non-ministry employers on there, but especially for you, you'll find a lot of churches, a lot of people in search of a worship leader. Those types of jobs will be there. Focus2 comes alongside that and says, now how do I prepare to get that job? So they really go hand in hand, left and right.
Excellent.
And any other questions at all about Focus? Great, well please get in there, dig around. If you find anything that stumps you or you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And so now, our agenda, where are we going? Let's look at the map. So first what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit more about my office and what I do, what we do in career development. Then we'll talk about defining career readiness. What does this term mean? When I say get career ready, what does it mean to be career ready, Fred? Then is this biblical? As Christians, and especially what you learn here at Boyce, is everything we do needs to be filtered through our biblical worldview. What does this book say as God's inspired word about this question of career development? Sadly, our whole lecture isn't about that. I would love to do hours and hours about career development, but I'll do my best to do a summary. Then we'll talk about NACE, that's the National Association of Colleges and Employers. There are 8 career readiness competencies, and those are the 8 key skills that employers are looking for in new members of the workforce. Then we'll talk about how to approach your job search. How do you come into those final steps, these final months before you go out into the world? Then we'll talk concretely, what are your next steps? What are 6 things you can do after we're done here? And then just a few recommended resources, and of course, reopen the floor for questions. And then Professor Doe gave me permission to go a little over, so if I keep you from getting to a class or something like that, please feel free to slip out the back. No disrespect will be felt from that. And so my office's mission, you'll notice it's very mission statement-y, very verbose as it should be. The Office of Career Development provides proactive vocation and career guidance to students with a focus on determining and charting the trajectory for gospel-minded success through internship and networking opportunities with businesses, ministries, and churches. Now someone tell me, what in the world does that mean?
You're here to help us.
Yes, exactly, yes.
Got somebody on our side.
Absolutely. And she's exactly right, I'm here to help you. What do you think I help you do?
Find realistic careers.
Yes.
And give us, like, break down the steps to actually actually make that happen.
Absolutely. So come alongside you and help you figure out realistic paths to realistic careers. Absolutely. Never losing sight again of the dream and the passion. And so the way I pitch this to parents, the way I describe it to prospective students is I'm your person for guidance, preparation, and deployment. Guidance, what is your gifting? What has the Lord made you good at? What do you enjoy? What makes the hours go by? What puts you in the zone? Then, let's talk preparation. Now we kind of know what we like, what skills I want to use, what jobs fit that skill set. How do I get the job? I'm going to need a resume, a cover letter. I'm going to need mock interviews, or at least know how to get through an interview, even if I don't do practice ones. All the concrete things again, LinkedIn profiles, before we actually go get the job. And then deployment. Lord willing, we launch you out of Boyce into the world for God's glory. And then I'm here if you get out there and realize, hey, I need a new resume. Hey, I need to update this, or what about that? Can I log into Focus2 again? Reach back out. I'm glad to help, or whoever's in this role will be glad to help. Now, of course, you can learn more at my website, boycecollege.com/career development. But before we move on, I really want to hone in on this idea of the sweet spot. And when I say the sweet spot, I've taken this from Ken Coleman, and the idea is where your talent meets passion meets mission, that Venn diagram is your sweet spot. And so talent is work that you do best. These are your skills. This may be playing guitar. This may be leading. This may be setting vision. This may be communication. What are the things that you do best? 3 to 5 top skills. Then they come together with passion. What are those 1, 3, 5 things that you're most passionate about? When you're doing those things, your heart sings. Maybe it's being with little kids in the nursery. Most of you are saying, absolutely not. Some of you, it might be working with youth. Maybe it's working with the elderly. Maybe it's just playing your instrument and that's your thing. You go in your space and the hours melt back. And then mission is driving results that matter to you. What are the concrete things that you want to see come from your work? Is it people coming to Christ? Is it people coming to Christ, but also they know what they want to do with their lives? Is it getting through a difficult question as a counselor? And if we can find a place where those 3 things come together, then 70–80% of your day, the goal is that you have the same experience I do, which is that much of your day is enjoyed doing things you're good at and that you enjoy. And the beauty of the sweet spot is it's not one job. It's not, you're a worship major, you play 4 instruments and you're great at it, so you have got to be a musician. And if we don't make you a musician, you'll never find any joy in your work. The beauty of the sweet spot is it can be a range of things. It could be being a professional musician. Maybe it's being a music teacher. Maybe it's just working with young kids as a nanny. So it can be a wide range, a wide scope of careers, as long as they fit that talent, passion, and mission. And of course, the more honed in, the more refined that is, the more in-depth, then it may just take longer to get there. And that's okay. Sometimes we have to be in this for the long haul. Yeah, I didn't graduate with my undergrad, and then the next day I got to work in career services. Sometimes it takes some steps along the way and a few mistakes realizing, you know what? This isn't what I want to do with my life. And that's okay. And so now, let's define that term. What is career readiness? What do I mean when I keep throwing this term around? And so what I mean by this is a foundation from which to demonstrate the requisite core competencies that broadly prepare the college educated for success in the workplace and for lifelong career management. Now, someone else, what does this mean in normal people terms? Let's break this academic definition down. We've got a small class, so the number of new people is slowly going to shrink. Any stabs at it?
I mean, really basically what we need to think about to be ready for launching a new career.
Yes.
And how to go about that.
Absolutely. What you need to know to be ready to launch into your career and how to go about that. Absolutely. And so there are 8 competencies that they identify. And these 8 things are career and self-development, pretty self-explanatory. Communication, critical thinking, equity and inclusion, leadership, professionalism, teamwork, and technology. And what I want you to be concerned with over the next few months, the next few weeks and days, is how am I getting better at these skills? What experiences in my life show that I have these skills? And the ones you don't have, the ones that need more work, what can I start doing to get better? And so those are the types of questions I want you to be asking. And what we'll do is we'll really focus on 4 of those once we get there. But now, the question is this biblical. And this is the question we should be asking of everything that's presented to us. What does God's Word say about this? A little bit of a spoiler alert. I've got the reformers on some of these slides, so you can imagine they agree with me when I get to my answer. So do I have someone that will volunteer to read Genesis 1:26-31 for us?
I can.
Any takers, please? Can you see that?
Then God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." Do I keep reading?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth."
And you can pause there.
Okay?
And so that takes us through Genesis 1:28. And so I want you to take away from here is 2 of the communicable attributes, 2 of the things that we share that God also has, more perfectly of course, but that he's allowed us to replicate, is the idea of dominion and the idea of working. And we see that here, that Adam's role is to take dominion in verse 26, and then, made in the image of God in 27, his job is again to subdue the earth and take dominion over it for God's glory. And we won't read all of these, but if you take note of the reference, then we see in Genesis 2, the one thing that isn't perfect about creation is that Adam is alone. He doesn't have a helpmate that's perfect for him. And of course, we know the story. God puts Adam to sleep. From the rib of his side, God makes woman. And then Adam says at last, "Flesh of my flesh, she shall be called woman." And why was she there? Her goal is to help him take dominion of the garden. And then, of course, marriage is instituted, and we believe the institution still stands today. But what I want you to see is that pre-fall, pre-Genesis 3, work exists. And even in marriage, the context was so that perfectly this couple could work in God's world. But the fall. And now work is marred. Like everything else in creation, work has been tainted by sin. But even with the taintedness of sin, we still see glimpses of God's goodness in places like Ecclesiastes 3 and 5. Where we see in 3 that I perceive there's nothing better than to be joyful and to do good as long as someone lives. Also that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in his toil. This is one of God's gifts to us as men and women. I love the way Zach Eswin puts it in his book, Recovering Eden, the Gospel According to Ecclesiastes. He says, the preacher, that is the author in Ecclesiastes 1:1, is a skeptic in the biblical sense, that he observes the world before him, he ponders his steps, and takes time to make a decision within the realities and the constraints of his fallen world. This is wisdom of the kind commended by Proverbs. Ponder the path of your feet, which is what we see in Proverbs 4:26. He continues, however, in Proverbs, a good man plus God's love and wisdom equals a good life. In Ecclesiastes, a good man still dies like the beast or the fool. So the wisdom literature needs Ecclesiastes in order to keep us from entrusting ourselves to trite formulas under the sun. End quote. And so what Eswin gets at there and across his book is that God has gifted us with things like work, like marriage, like love, like utensils that work, and money, and all the things that we see, even as fleeting as they are. But all those things, as much as we can find time and a way to enjoy them, give us glimpses back to what Eden was like. Because that's all Adam and Eve had. And this is his main point, is they had each other, they had God, and a little work to do. And so as much as we can replicate that in this fallen world, we see God's glory at work. So I take all that to say, along with the reformers and men like Tim Keller, that work is indeed God glorifying. So all work has dignity because it's something that God does. And because we do it in his place, as his representatives, we learn that not only does work have dignity in itself, but all kinds of work have dignity. And eventually, through the course of the Reformation, this is what the Reformers came to refer to as the doctrine of vocation. Hence, my title, Advisor for Vocation and Career Development. So the idea for the Reformers was that work and calling do not only belong to the priesthood. It's not only those who vow an oath of celibacy and remove themselves from the majority of workings of society who are called, but every Christian is called. Whether it's the mom who stays at home, like my wife, or it's someone working in the coffee shop, or it's a student whose job is to do as well as they can in their grades. Each of those people, since God rules every area of our lives, is called to bring God glory in that season. And I agree. So I think then the question is, how should we pursue career development? And how should we work once we get these jobs? Or even as students, how should we do it? And I think the answer is as though God is watching. Because he is. And this is what we see in Ephesians 6, 5 through 9, where Paul says to slaves and masters, treat each other equitably. Because God, the impartial judge, is in heaven, verse 9, and he will judge rightly. And I don't intend to say that slavery in the first century is equivalent to the employer-employee relationship. It's not. There are clear differences there. Hermeneutics matter. But there's principles that can be gleaned there. And I think the major one is this idea, that whether you're the employer or the employee, the slave or the master, regardless of your cultural context, your wealth, your poverty, one day, each of us will stand before a God who is impartial. And apart from the gospel, we will be found wanting in God's scales. So let us work in a way that brings God glory by doing everything for the sake of his name, as though he's watching. And so that brings us back to our 8 competencies. So now we've got a little bit of a biblical survey, a little bit of a biblical worldview question answered. So now how then do we think about these 8 competencies? What are they and how do they apply? And so you've already seen the list of 8 here. And what we'll do is, as best we can in the time we have, define each one, and then spend a little extra time, if I can, on these 4, because I think they're the most needed and also the most important in our society today. And so number 1, career and self-development. The definition here is proactively develop oneself and one's career through continual personal and professional learning, awareness of one's strengths and weaknesses, navigation of career opportunities, and networking to build relationships within and without one's organization. So here we see one of the key things we need to be able to do is network. We need to be able to talk to other people about what our skills are. We need to be able to establish a plan and follow it, just like you've done in your academic coursework. You go talk to your advisor, you figure out this semester I'll take these classes, not those, and then when registration opens, everyone fills up the class before you get there. You step back, reevaluate, and we take a different course load. Same idea with our career. Learn those skills now, how to adapt, improvise, overcome as things change. But make a plan, let it be flexible, but we need to be thinking of having a plan as we go. And some examples of what this looks like, you should show an awareness of your own strengths and also an awareness of your needs for development. You should be developing plans and goals for your future career, displaying curiosity and seeking opportunities to learn. Are you a student that as you learn things, you talk to the professor and ask, hey, where can I learn more about this? What book do you recommend? Again, these patterns of life, is this the way you conduct yourself now? And then voluntarily participating in further education. So whether that's doing volunteer things or missions trips, or again, spending that extra time with professors or your pastors. What are we doing to learn more, going above and beyond the minimum? And if I go too fast and anyone needs this, I'm glad to send you the PDF of these career readiness competencies. And number 2, communication. Clearly and effectively exchange information, ideas, facts, perspectives with persons inside and outside of an organization. And this one's pretty self-explanatory. We know what communication is, but are we effective at it? Are we good at verbal, written, nonverbal communication? Are we effective in employing active listening? Can we listen as well as speak? Of course, the old cliche, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Much easier said than done. But again, learning those skills now, how to listen in order to understand, not just listen in order to respond. And of course, the more Twitter and political our culture gets, the more and more we lean toward listen to respond, not to understand. So this is a key skill. Then, even things like persuasion and influencing skills are included in this, because you also need to be able to pitch an idea and explain why it's a good idea. Advocate for that change in budget. Advocate for why this should be a major program offered, why this class should be structured that way. So also learning how to persuade, how to win friends and influence people, to steal Carnegie's line. And then, this one's key, promptly informing relevant others when needing guidance with assigned tasks. What do you think that one means? Promptly inform relevant others when needing guidance with assigned tasks. Any ideas there?
Asking for help when you need it.
Asking for help when you need it, absolutely. And when something goes wrong, not being the person with all the knowledge about it that doesn't share it. And both of those are much easier said than done. It's very hard to say, I'm struggling, I need help. And it's even harder to say, yeah, I broke it. And nobody knows until I tell you. But the longer I hold on to it, the worse it's going to get. And especially as a public affairs professional prior to this, that's one of the big rules, is go negative early. Because the longer you hold on to the bad news, the longer BP doesn't talk about the oil spill, the worse it gets. And one day people are going to figure out the oil spilling out. So do we want to announce it when there's 10,000 barrels? Or do we announce it when it's 100,000 barrels and now the media showed up first? So same thing in your personal life. Do you tell your boss you messed up on that reporting for the budget before she finds out or after she finds out? And of course, it's better for you, the organization, trust, all of the above, when you're humble enough to admit, I'm human, I made a mistake. And then we just do our best not to make the same mistake twice. And you'll notice as we go through these, what's amazing is the fact that employers really had to tell colleges that these are the things they need. As most of you, as you're listening, you're thinking, oh, that's what I do anyway. That's what a Christian would do. And that's exactly right. As we live Christianly, we're living out the values employers know they need, even if they don't know they need Christ. And next, critical thinking, again, one that we're very familiar with. Identifying and responding to needs based upon an understanding of situational context and a logical analysis. And this is one of the things where we excel, especially as practitioners of the arts, is we pride ourselves in our ability to think critically. We look at a situation, we analyze it, we find an argument, we rebut it, or we support it. This is what we do. And I say we because I was an English Rhetoric and Humanistic Studies undergrad. So you're my people. Right? The arts will rule. And the reason we will rule is because we have these skills. You may not be an engineer, you may not know how to do calculus, but what you do know how to do is to think. You know how to learn and then implement the things you've learned. You know how to lead. You know how to find that engineering team's strengths and weaknesses and put the right engineers with the right programmers, even though you don't understand all of the digits that are happening. So, this is why you can be successful even if you don't have the STEM degree. We just have to think about what skills do I bring to the table, and then continue to be a lifelong learner. There are some things we'll need to learn to be successful in the tech industry. But there's no reason you can't leave as a worship major and find yourself in a tech field.
That's right.
The next, equity and inclusion, demonstrating an awareness for the attitude, knowledge, and skills required to actively engage and include people from different local and global cultures, engage in anti-racist practices, and actively challenge the systems, structures, and policies of racism. So the idea here being that we should have an embracing attitude toward diversity. And I think this goes larger than racial diversity. It's diversity of thought, diversity of background, diversity of faith. So we as Christians believe that Jesus Christ, John 14:6, is the way, the truth, and the life. There's no other way to the Father but through him. But we must hold that intention with, I will very likely work with a Muslim, or very likely work with someone who's Hindu, or atheist, or agnostic. And we need to learn now, how do I interact with those people? Even if they don't agree with my faith, even if I don't get the opportunity to share the gospel. Or when I do and they reject it, how do I still interact with them person to person as co-workers? And this is hard, and it really is a gray area. How do I seek to persuade men, but also live among them? And this is Jesus' prayer in John 17. I don't ask you, Father, to take them out of the world. Just keep them from the evil one. And so this is our constant tension as believers. We don't get to leave the world. We're believers. We've been made alive spiritually, but we still exist as ambassadors in the midst of brokenness. And then, of course, this has concrete implications as well. Do we spend time with people who are racially, ethnically, gender different from us? And are we demonstrating the ability to be flexible, to adapt to different environments that aren't what we're used to? Then leadership, recognizing and capitalizing on personal and team strengths to achieve organizational goals. So sort of the how, what we do, and the why. We recognize and capitalize on the strengths for the purpose of achieving our organization's goals. So part of the sweet spot here is we find an organization and we're passionate about them and their mission, and then we're always working to achieve that mission. And as a Marine, it just wouldn't be right if I didn't make a Marine Corps reference. So of all the things that the Marine Corps does poorly, the thing that we do exceptionally well is preach and teach leadership. And so the 14 Marine Corps leadership traits are very self-explanatory, and they will completely change your leadership paradigm if you can find a way to implement them. And the best way to remember this is just JJ, did, tie, buckle. So I've grouped them that way. So JJ, justice and judgment. Did, dependability, initiative, decisiveness. Tie, T-I-E, tact, integrity, enthusiasm. Are you a leader marked by these traits? And then buckle, bearing, unselfishness, courage, knowledge, loyalty, endurance. And yet we won't take the time to explain what each of these means because they're fairly self-explanatory. And no one embodies these traits perfectly. But if you can become a leader who leads with these traits in mind, if you're thinking about being courageous in your decision making, having bearing and professionalism as you interact with your employees or your teammates, exercising good judgment, these are all traits that will make you very effective as a leader. And then again, sadly, we don't have time to dig into all of them, but the 11 leadership principles that then go on to apply these traits. Number 1, know yourself and seek self-improvement. 2, be technically and tactically proficient, meaning be good at your job and also be good at thinking about how we can take next steps and win the day. Know your people, or of course it would be know your Marines, but know your people and look out for their welfare. Are you constantly concerned as a servant leader about those who you lead? Number 4, keep your people informed. Don't be the one with all the information that no one else knows. Set the example. Ensure that the task is understood, supervised, and accomplished. Leadership in a nutshell. Make sure people understand it. Make sure you watch them do it. You check in as they need it. And then you're responsible ultimately for whether or not it gets done. 7, train your individuals as a team. 8, make sound and timely decisions. Don't sit for a day on decisions that should be made in an hour or 20 minutes or 30 seconds. Every situation doesn't provide the time that you'd necessarily like. Develop a sense of responsibility in your subordinates. So make sure that everyone in your team feels responsible for the success of the organization. 10, employ your organization within its capabilities, meaning know what your team is capable of and be willing to advocate for your team when you are and when you aren't able to meet the desired demand. And then finally, seek and take responsibility. And again, much easier said than done. But are we the type of people who look for responsibility and then also take it when it's ours to be grabbed? And then next, our last few traits here. Professionalism. Knowing work environments differ greatly. Understand and demonstrate effective work habits and act in the interest of the larger community and workplace. And this is one we can definitely work on as undergraduates, is professionalism. How do we communicate with our professors, with each other, with our bosses, with people we interact with who aren't students? Are we dressing, speaking, carrying ourselves in a professional manner? That starts now, before we have the interview. Next, teamwork. Building and maintaining collaborative relationships. Working effectively toward common goals. Again, fits very well with leadership, something that makes a lot of sense. It's intuitive. But are we team players? Have we learned to effectively work with others who are and aren't like us? And then finally, our 8th, technology. And again, this is where we excel as practitioners of the arts. You wouldn't think it because you look at technology and you see my cool Canva graphic and you think, oh my goodness, how can I understand and leverage technologies ethically to enhance efficiencies, complete tasks, and accomplish goals? I have no idea what that means. But if we look at the sample behaviors, everything about these behaviors say the arts. Navigate change and be open to learning new technologies. Is that not you? You never used Google Drive before, then you got here, everything's on Google Drive, so you figured it out. You never used Canvas before, then you got here, you figured out how to work Canvas. Now you're a Canvas pro. Use technology to improve efficiency and productivity in their work. How many of you have done assignments via Google Drive as a group so that you don't have to meet each other over and over again in physical places? Right? You figured that out. Identify appropriate technology for completing specific tasks. Do we use Google Docs? Do we use Google Sheets? Do we use Zoom? Do we use Teams? Do we just use FaceTime? Or maybe we set up a group meet. Or let's do an FB Messenger. Manage technology to integrate information to support relevant, effective, and timely decision making. When is this due? How long will it take me to do it? We back plan, and then we implement the plan. That's how you made it to senior year, and you're almost done. Quickly adapt to new and unfamiliar technologies. When you came to Boyce, it was a new and unfamiliar place. You figured out how the culture worked. You figured out where Cook Hall is in relation to the pavilion. And then you made it work. And a couple of times you got lost, but you either asked for help or you toughed it out, and now you're not late to class anymore. And finally, manipulate information, construct ideas, and use technology to achieve strategic goals. This is exactly what you do with arguments day in and day out. Especially those of you, if any of you are in the Honors Collegium, you figure out what information do I need from the library, you go find it, that information leads you to more information, you synthesize it, you make an argument that you think is logical, and then you implement it. And so again, these are skills that you learned as a practitioner of the arts. You just have to figure out how do they work out there, not just in here. But then some of you are going to be teachers and professors, and you're going to use it in here. But Professor Doe will tell you the key to stepping into an academic role such as his is actual experience plus the education. And that's what he brings together. Yes, he's about to walk with the PhD, but he also has years and years of actual practitioner experience. He didn't just do a PhD and never play an instrument. He didn't just play an instrument and never pursue academics. So same thing in the real world. You need the formal education, whether that's a degree or a certificate, and you need as much relevant experience as you can get at your level. And that brings us into our final slides here as we approach the job search. And this is Ken Coleman again, the 7 stages. Number 1, we get clear. What's my sweet spot? What do I want to do? Talent, passion, mission. This lends to getting qualified. So now I know what I want to do. What is the minimum education to get there? Is it a certificate? Is it a bachelor's? Is it a PhD if I want to be in academia? Whatever that minimum is, that now becomes the goal for get qualified. Number 3, networking, get connected. To get my dream job, the proximity principle says I need to be around people who are doing it and in places where it's being done. If I want to be in Professor Doe's shoes, I need to spend time with Professor Doe and his peers and be in academic settings where it's happening. If I want to be an elementary school teacher, I need to be around elementary school teachers and in elementary schools. So think about that for what you want to do. If I want to be a worship leader, what worship leaders can I get around? Where are they doing it? Where do they do it other than church? What organizations and Facebook groups are they in? How can I get in those? Then we get started. Once we're qualified and we're connected, now we start that first job. We start putting in applications. Then we get promoted. We take that job that doesn't pay as much as we'd like, but I'm a paid musician now. I'm only making $22 a year, and I'm working 3 jobs, but I'm officially a paid musician. 6 years ago when I graduated, all I was doing was freelance. Now I've got a contract. Then we get the dream job. And that gap could be 4 years, 1 year, 10 years. For Ken Coleman, the goal to be a broadcast speaker, it took 10 years from get clear to the dream job. For you, it may be longer or shorter. But the quality of your dream will dictate how much work you put in. And then 7, the whole reason we did all this work is for the glory of God. Give yourself away. Give yourself to it. Do the best you can at it. And point people to Christ. In every success you have, you know where it came from. And in wisdom, share that success came from God as you have opportunity. And you're not going to share the gospel with every person that says, great work. But as that door opens, that was awkward. As that door opens, share the gospel. And so now, what are our next steps? What can we do concretely? And the answer is first, look through the student resources page at my website, boycecollege.com/career development. And there's just a plethora of resources there that I hope will help you whether or not we ever talk again. There's a resume guide, cover letter guide, a full how-to for your LinkedIn profile. Then make an appointment with me. I'd love to talk with you one-on-one so we can be less abstract and more concrete about what do you want to do. And that's easy. Website, and you'll see a link for click here, or just shoot me an email and I'll send you the link to my calendar. Number 3, sign up for your Focus2. Get in there and do some assignments. And then, fairly obvious, as we start finding jobs that fit you, target the resume and cover letter, meaning pull keywords, key phrases that fit that specific job. Every resume and every cover letter need to fit that specific job posting. And we'll talk more about that when we meet, or if I see you again and we actually do resume and cover letter writing workshops. And number 6, build and update your LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn is your professional social media presence. So that's going to be an employer's go-to for who is this guy that just applied? Who is this young lady? And ideally, what they find is a well-done LinkedIn profile that gives them a first impression that you want. And then finally, our last slide, some recommended resources. So Just Do Something by Kevin DeYoung. Great short book just about how do I find God's will. Spoiler, the answer is do what opens itself to you, and if it's not unbiblical, do it. Don't overthink it. Then from Paycheck to Purpose, that's the book version of the 7 stages we talked about, just details about how do I do each step. And then you can do anything I'm reading through right now, excellent book. And the idea is how liberal arts majors are the ones who will be able to adapt in the future. And yes, it's going to take some work. You'll have to do some training and learn some things you don't know yet, but you have the skills it takes already. And one more time, in case you didn't hear it, boycecollege.com/career development, full set of resources there for you as well. And each of those books is linked there as well. Yeah. Any questions at all for me? Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Absolutely.
This was really helpful. Yes.
Thank you. Glad to do it.
Do we feel like we trust Mr. Walker and his office to help us? Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to just meet him, and just hear his passion for a biblical worldview of work, and also just his passion for you students to get out there. So very thankful for you. We'll be praying for your family.
Thank you. I
As we
appreciate
await
it.
baby number 2. And with that, friends, go in the grace of the Lord.